it was not, right? So if you were in charge of NATO, if you were, say, Joe Biden, what would your next move be in the war in Ukraine? What would you do?
Peace, immediately. Call back Trump. That's the only way out.
Call back Trump.
Call back Trump. Because, you can criticize him for many reasons. I understand all the discussion, but, the best foreign policy of the recent several decades belonged to him. He did not initiate any new war.
Yes.
He treated nicely the North Koreans and Russia, even the Chinese, He delivered a policy which was the best one for Middle East, Abraham Accords.
Yes.
So that was a very good foreign policy. He's criticized that he's not educated enough to understand the world. But this is not the case. Facts count. And his foreign policy was the best one for the world in the last several decades I have seen. And if he would have been the president at the moment of the Russian invasion started, no, it would be not possible to do that by the Russians. So Trump is the man who can save the Western world and probably the human beings in the globe as well. That's my personal conviction.
Can I ask you, just to skip around for 1 second, about the Russian invasion of Ukraine? Days before that invasion at the Munich Security Conference, the Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris, said to Zelensky at a press briefing, we would like Ukraine to join NATO. Now, Ukraine joining NATO obviously cannot, is a...
It's a long story. When the idea of membership of Ukraine, NATO, was raised, it was in the summit of NATO, Bucharest, 2007 or 8. Russia was not strong enough to stop it. So there was a real chance at that time to integrate the Ukrainians into NATO. But it was rejected. There was no agreement among the big Western countries to do so, so it was postponed. But after 2 or 3 years later, the Russians became stronger and stronger and stronger. And now they are even stronger. So we missed the historical opportunity to do so. And this window of opportunity is not open anymore. So we can't do that. So we can't afford to have that long borderline between Russia and Ukraine, who belongs to NATO. That would mean immediate war danger to all of us, even in Washington. So it's dangerous even for the United States. It's not just dangerous for the region, but even for you, for the families.
Because it could provoke a nuclear exchange.
So it's not a realistic proposal at this moment. So forget about it. We should say just the opposite. We should make a deal with the Russians on the new security architecture to provide security, sovereignty for Ukraine, but not membership in NATO.
So why, and that I think your view is shared by many sober people who watch this, so why would the vice president say something like that at a moment when there were Russian troops massed on the Ukrainian border?
It's difficult to follow the mindset of a big power like you are. So it's a different approach to everything than the approach of 10 million people of Hungary with the historical experience, knowing the Russians better than you know. You always think that you know better because of the Cold War, but it's not the case.
They never occupied Washington.
Yeah. You should ask us. How does it work? What is the way of thinking? What is the cultural context?
So back to the piece, if you were in charge, or if Trump were to win in 2024, how would you approach that? What would it look like, the settlement?
First, you should admit, probably publicly acknowledging, that the key is in your hand. So if United States would like to have a peace, next morning there is a peace. Because it's obvious that the Ukrainians, the poor Ukrainians on their own, they are not competitive in this war. So if there is no money and there is no equipment from the West and especially from the United States, the war is over.
Yes.
The solution is in your hand. Is in the hand of your president. The present one or the future one. But you will solve it. The United States can do it, nobody else. It's not the solution for the Ukrainians. Of course, it's about Ukrainians. They cannot be neglected. They must be involved. But the real factor is not Ukraine. The real factor is intention of the United States.
Yes. So policymakers in the United States have been talking recently about taking Crimea including the Russian port, away from the Russians. Is that a realistic goal, and what would happen if we tried?
It's totally unrealistic. So, no way.
That's not a wise.
No. It's not wise. It's not realistic. It's out of question.
Last night we stood here and you had fireworks over the city to celebrate the founding of the city, of this nation, St. Stephen's Day, and you had about 10% of your entire population standing outside cheering, and they all seem to be happy to be Hungarian. How do you get a country that's grateful to be Hungarian and identifies?
You know, it's an ancient nation first. The country was established 1,100 years ago. So we are a historical nation, using the same language, no relatives, nobody speaks the same language around us. Germans and Slavic, no Hungarians. So therefore, to maintain the language, to maintain the culture for this country is a big achievement by itself. So we celebrated, even yesterday, that we did it for more than 1,000 years, that we are still Hungarians. And to be Hungarians we are very proud of it. We love the nation, we love the country, and we are proud of it. It's not very much mainstream thinking, political thinking of today Western societies, but in Hungary we are still very patriotic and Christian and committed to that values. Not in an ideological level, but on the streets every day.
Do you think that's why you're so unpopular among the leadership in the United States and the West?
I'm not the favorite politicians of the liberals, unfortunately, but nobody is perfect, you know.
But why do you think that is? The country seems to be thriving. That's usually the measure we use.
No, it's more about our civilization. I mean, the Western Christian civilization. Now, the main division line is not according to ideologies. It's deeper. It has an anthropological character. So on one side, in Europe and probably in your country, but in Europe definitely, there are groups of people who think that the most important thing of the world is their ego, themselves, me. This is the center of the world. The other camp of the people, the other part of the society thinks that it's not true, because there are certain things which are more important than me, than my ego. Family, nation, God. And because they are more important than me, I have to serve these higher level things. So this society has a majority here in Hungary. And the other society, which is concentrating only me, you know, only dealing with myself, it's more westernized, dominating factor of the political life. And the governments of the West, more belonging to the first group of the people. I belong to the second one, and Hungary belongs to the second one. Our constitution is concentrating on the we, you know, how we are linked together, family, nation, God, what is common, you know. So we, the Hungarian nation, that's how we speak on that. It's totally out of fashion now in the Western European societies.
But why would that be so provocative to certain people in the West? I mean, different countries have different traditions. Mongolia has its own religions, language, but that's not offensive. But something about what you said is very offensive.
Because in the Western societies, politics very often led by intellectuals. And the intellectuals like to be ideologists, a special approach from the ideological point of view. And you know, ideology is a very difficult thing because it has an exclusivity. So when the liberal says that this is the interpretation of society, it means that this is the only way to interpret the society. If you do differently, you cannot be a good man. So we have another interpretation. We have a Christian and national, more traditional interpretation of human being and society. But they can't accept it because it's different. So we are plural, they are hegemonistic. That's the problem.
So the intolerance is baked in. It's part of...
It's coming from the
ideology.
Absolutely. The liberal ideology, basically. Liberal originally meant freedom. But now in Europe, liberal means that you are enemy of the freedom because you are hegemonistic request on society, on values and the concept of human being as well. So liberals are against freedom. That's how we see them.
I've noticed. I mean, I don't live in Hungary. I can't assess it. I can assess your media landscape, which is much freer than ours. much freer, much more diversity.